And some people say, well, I experience synchronicity sometimes, and I don't know, sometimes they're small ones and sometimes they're big ones. And the way you know a synchronicity is important to you is the way it hits your emotional body. So when something happens and it just hits you really big, that's when you know.
I'm really looking forward to our chat.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm delighted, really.
Do you want to tell everybody about your story, a little bit about you?
Sure. I am a meditation coach and trainer, and I came to this path quite unexpectedly. I used to work in corporate on Wall Street in New York City, and that was the life I was really slated for, that I thought I was going to live for the rest of my life. I had studied economics in college, and when I found myself at the age of 28, having achieved most of my financial and professional goals, I also found myself suicidal. Here was this life I was trying to build, all the things I thought I had wanted: money, a beautiful place to live, lots of friends, but I felt completely lonely, very much empty and isolated in a city of 7 million people. So I really just prayed at that point. It wasn't like I necessarily had believed in God, but I had this inner prayer that I needed help, and I needed to find a way just to live on the planet. That was my request, was just to find a way to be okay in the world. So that brought me to meditation. I happened upon a Zen book written by Sherry Huber, and it's a hand-lettered book that she likes to write. She writes these very simple Zen books. And I had learned about her personal story in which she had tried to commit suicide by shooting herself in the stomach. And when I read her books, they were like a slap in the face, like just full of wisdom, full of truth. They were the things I needed to hear. They were like balm to my spirit. And I wanted to learn everything I could about meditation. And back then there were no YouTube videos and guided meditation resources. So I bought a book, and I bought a Zen book on how to meditate for beginners. And I taught myself how to meditate in my Brooklyn condo and counting my breaths 10 to 1. And it was so powerfully healing that I decided that I wanted to leave my career on Wall Street to study meditation in Asia. And that led me on a journey around the world for a couple years, studying the healing arts, meditation, yoga. And I had no intention with that. It was just something I felt that I personally needed. It was like medicine for me to travel and to learn these practices. And then when I came back, I was called to go to Los Angeles. And that's when I started teaching yoga. And then I was asked to teach meditation. And so I was kind of, I guess, unexpectedly pulled and called to this work. I really fell in love with it. And now we run meditation trainings with people from around the world. And we teach it a softer, effortless approach to meditation that really embraces the creative feminine. Because I started to notice just in my own journey and traveling to these different places, a lot of patterns and a lot of bias towards a more masculine-based approach. All the traditions and styles of meditation are predominantly founded and shared by men from a male perspective. And I felt that what was truly missing for me in my personal practice and just general spiritual practice was the feminine qualities of softness and gentleness and nurturing and intuition and healing, all these practices that were kind of made separate from meditation. And it took some time, but learning how to integrate these practices together as one. How can we manifest our intention? How can we have our prayer heard and received through spiritual practice? How can we heal? Every morning, just in our sitting practice, how can we be open to that universal energy that's always here and rejuvenate ourselves with that energy and stay balanced? So really enjoy sharing this softer, creative approach to meditation, where you can really engage your imagination, your senses, all of your energy, have access to all of your energy, your sensuality, your sexuality, your energy. And that's what we teach through Sura Flow.
Yeah. And so your website's obviously Sura Flow. Explain to us a little bit more about flow and what that means.
Flow is truly a state of consciousness. And I would say it's a state of consciousness that feels like you, like your true self, where you don't feel like you have to hide or be something else or say the right things. It's being your truest, most vulnerable self, engaging in those things that you love, that you truly connect to. So flow is a state of consciousness where you're completely engaged, where you're connected, absorbed, immersed fully and wholly as your whole self and what you're doing, so that to such a degree that you don't even notice the separation between you, the activity, your environment. You tap into a state of oneness and unity and what you're doing. And it's in that completely, purely connected state that we tap into our inherent power, because there's no more resistance. There's no separation. There's no me having to do this. It's me and flowing with.
Yeah. Like the universe, right? It's like you and the universe kind of become one in that moment.
Merging and emerging.
Yeah. So for people that are kind of new to this and they don't know anything about flow, or can you explain a little bit more about what that might feel like and how you could get into it?
Sure. People tap into it in different ways. So we might hear about flow from athletes talking about being in the zone, where while they're highly focused, highly engaged in what they're doing, they suddenly have a sense of oneness or transcendence, and time slows down, and they have complete and utter control over every single movement because they're so connected to the present moment. So that's described as being in the zone. So that's one feeling of just that state of being highly connected, unified with all that is. Artists also talk about being in flow, perhaps when they're writing and they're channeling. Many people know Paulo Coelho. He wrote The Alchemist.
Yes.
Actually, he had intended to be a famous writer. He had always wanted to be a writer since he was a child, and went through a series of trials and tribulations. His family put him into an insane asylum, but he never gave up on his dream of being a famous writer. And when he finally wrote The Alchemist, he wrote it in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So you could say that he channeled it because he was in flow. He downloaded the book, so to speak.
I bet the steam was coming off the keyboard.
If there was, incredible. I don't think there was one then. He was probably writing it, or an old-fashioned typewriter, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's the state is usually a state of pure peace. This is what it can feel like: pure peace or pure love.
Yeah.
Of engagement. And sometimes people achieve that state of flow through stillness and meditation. So when you're in a flow state, you're connected usually to something higher and bigger than yourself. So you could say you're connected to the universe, you're connected to God, source. And so through meditation, as you start to let yourself drop into stillness, whether it's just allowing yourself to be relaxed or enjoying the pleasure of music or something that you like, you can start to feel your whole energy just let go. Because how many of us throughout the day, I mean, myself included, you're kind of in your mind and you're doing things, you're juggling things, and a lot of our attention's up here and the words that are going on in the mental space. So when you're in a state of flow, a lot of times all of that goes away. So the mind becomes clear. Your energy is open and it's full and it's flowing. You don't feel like you're trying and you're pushing and you're having to make things happen. It's like you're just together with everything. You're in flow with life.
Would you say then that almost like our conscious mind can block this flow state if we're too much in our own heads?
Absolutely. I think that is the biggest obstacle is our ego mind, because we have so much conditioning.
Yeah.
And we don't even realize that a lot of our thoughts are just from conditioning, from our upbringing, what our parents said, our parents' thoughts, our parents' beliefs, other people's beliefs. And so a lot of that is constantly blocking that flow. Our beliefs can block flow. If we constantly don't feel worthy, and if we choose not to feel good about ourselves because that's what we believe, we're going to block flow and good things coming to us. And I come from the school of thought that flow and abundance and synchronicity, all of these states are always available to us. It's just us who blocks that experience.
Yes, absolutely.
We tend to block that experience. So it's more about opening to those states.
So synchronicity then, again, for those people that don't know anything about it, what would you say it is, and how can we open ourselves up to it?
Okay, yes, I'd love to talk about synchronicity. I also wanted to just add one comment too, that healing can also contribute greatly to flow in one's life. So if you engage in any healing practice of the physical body, of your energy body, of the mental body, and your emotions, that will also increase the amount of flow and synchronicity that you can experience. Synchronicity is coined originally by Carl Jung it's coined originally as a meaningful coincidence.
Yeah.
A meaningful coincidence. So that would be, for example, a lot of us have experienced this. You think about someone and they call you a minute later. Or you think about something that you need, and later that day it just shows up magically in some odd and uncanny way that you could have never even planned for yourself. The chances are 1 in a million that would happen. And I would say synchronicity is also a result of this flow state consciousness. So synchronicity could be happening all the time because it's a reflection of oneness. It could be happening, but we're just not privy to it because we're very much in our own mind. We already have our own way of looking at the world, of seeing the world. Synchronicity often happens during really major life transitions. Death, birth, marriage, job change. That's when we tend to see a lot of synchronicity, and what can initiate that experience is our emotions. Our emotions can put into motion the entire universe and, in a sense, allow things to come into our space. And usually it's in those tender times, those vulnerable times, when we're growing, we're up-leveling, we're trying something new, we're going through a new experience that we never had, that we actually will open our consciousness, because on an unconscious or subconscious level, we begin looking for signs. Am I on the right path? Am I making the right decision?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's how we begin to open ourselves to synchronicity.
Mm.
And synchronicity is, in that sense, being at the right time, at the right place, with the right people.
Mm.
And things coming together in such a way, you would say a divine order.
It's interesting.
Coming together in this divine order for your highest path, for your evolvement, for your growth, to expand and balance your own consciousness. So Carl Jung believed that synchronicity was a reflection of a deeper order called unus mundus, like one order. And that oftentimes this was revealed through archetypes, archetypal symbols and signs throughout history. So an archetype is a prototype of an individual or a behavioral pattern. For example, Martin Luther King, he's the archetype of a hero. You could say he's the archetype of a savior. And so these are archetypes that show up through history. And we have new archetypes that are showing up at this time with the rising of feminine energy. So you could say Lady Gaga is a new archetype of feminine power and creativity, and the way she's showing up through her spirituality and her creative expression. So we have new archetypes, and these archetypes emerge, and we can learn how to embrace archetypal energies to grow as a soul. So if you're used to being victimized all the time, you know, let's just say like a lot of people play into the victim role. Life is happening to me. You know, why is this happening to me? Maybe you're being encouraged to look at a new archetype, you know, somebody who's empowered, somebody who's compassionate, who can see from a larger perspective. And this is how, when we start realizing and playing the victim archetype, what would it be like to be, you know, a goddess, to embrace the goddess archetype? Now your energy starts to shift.
Yeah.
And you get to experience a new part of yourself. So that's how archetypes come into play. And that's how also, you know, the theory is that synchronicity leads you more quickly to your destiny and the unleashing of your potential. So that's why it's so important to pay attention to synchronicity and meaningful signs and symbols. And some people say, well, I experience synchronicity sometimes, and I don't know, sometimes they're small ones and sometimes they're big ones. And the way you know a synchronicity is important to you is the way it hits your emotional body. So when something happens and it just hits you really big, that's when you know that's a big sign for you.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting what you're saying. It seems like we open ourselves up to synchronicity when there's we're going into the realms of possibility, and maybe we're moving from one story, you know, and one kind of type of energy that we're entertaining within ourselves to a new one. We're opening ourselves up, like you say, maybe we're wanting to level up, we're changing, we're making a different decision. How much do you think choice plays? What's that role in making choices with synchronicity, do you think?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I think one of our greatest powers is the power of choice. And yet, in a sense, when you're really paying attention and truly listening, it's almost as if you don't have to make choices because it's so clear.
Yeah, that's
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's amazing. So flow states, would you say, getting in this flow, this creates synchronicity? Is that right?
Yes. Because what happens is when you're in the flow state and you're in the oneness state, you're enjoying something that you love, maybe it's dance. A lot of people are able to enter flow states through dance, and you're one with the rhythm. You know, you're just moving, you're not thinking about how to move. Maybe there's live music, and you know, you're just moving to the rhythm. When you're in a flow state, you're in the oneness state, and synchronicity is a reflection of the oneness state. So anytime you choose to engage in something that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, that you love, that even like a little bit piques your interest or allows you to learn something new, you can more consciously enter that, in a sense, flow state just by letting go, learning how to relax a little bit, to let go. That's why meditation's so helpful. Even though I teach meditation, I don't think meditation is enough. In a sense, it's more than just the practice that we have in the first 20 minutes of our day. It's how do you take this energy that you cultivate through meditation into your entire life?
Yeah. And how
do you
would
really
you do
integrate that?
How do you personally integrate that?
Well, the way I do it is through purpose, play, and meditation. So I think that we have to allow ourselves to, I would add passion to that. So it'd be purpose, play, passion. And meditation is a tool to access those three things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when we allow ourselves to engage in what we feel passionate about, and I'm not talking about what the world says is awesome, you know, fame and fortune and all these, you know, big things. And I think that's another block to our true happiness, is actually subscribing to what society says this is so great. And once you have fame and once you have this and you have a certain number of followers, you're going to have, you know, be happy. And in most cases, it's the opposite effect. Because of everything you need to do to get there. So it's really this permission to follow what's so authentic to you. You know, what hits you deep? What do you like? And sometimes people think about passion and purpose as these big, monumental, like huge volcanic things in their lives. It doesn't have to be like that. It could start with a simple interest. It doesn't have to be the thing that like is, you know, that lights you up every single time. Sometimes it's the thing that, you know, you just do a little bit each day, and you just have some pleasure from it. And so if you're somebody that is looking for those things in your life, let yourself start simply. Don't try to find the big catastrophic thing. Just find the thing that sounds like fun. Or that sounds interesting. And you engage in purpose, passion, play. These are the universal energies that really help to bring yourself more into that flow state, because you don't have to try. Some people meditate and then they engage in activities that they really don't like at all. You know, so they'll meditate in the morning, then they'll go to work, sit in front of a computer, have to deal with office politics all day, and then I think the mindfulness culture tells us to put up with it even more, you know, be mindful of all the things. And instead of people just waking up to the fact that this is not my passion and purpose. So I think people get very confused about the mindfulness movement because they think it means more toleration of what you don't like. I guess for us, we come from the school of thought of trusting your desire, trusting your passion, trusting what gives you pleasure. And it's not about, you know, eating 10 bags of potato chips a day because that gives you pleasure. It's more about the deeper pleasure. I'm talking about the deeper contentment and peace that we receive. And oftentimes it happens when we're in service to others, when we're helping other people. And people really receive a lot of benefit from being of service because you tap into a whole new energy, because we're so connected. Once you're being of service to someone else, you're actually being of service to yourself. And that's why it's so uplifting and nourishing for your energy. So I think that by engaging in the things that we enjoy, we support our meditation or spiritual practice, and vice versa. So spiritual practice complements that. And that's why I think it's important to integrate it all together. When you live your purpose, your energy is focused on something positive.
Yes.
Your energy is on a positive focus. So if you don't have a positive focus, that means you have an unconscious focus or no focus. That means now your external environment is all there to shape you.
Yeah.
And maybe you're not as conscious of creating or making those decisions or noticing the signs. And it's not a mental thing. It's really an innate, visceral inner feeling. We know when we're living something that feels just right on, when we're on point, and we know when we're flailing. And there's nothing wrong with flailing, because sometimes you need to flail to kind of get on your path, right? And we can live these many different paths. I mean, we have infinite choice, but we know when we're living a path that's true to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not betraying ourselves on any level. We're not betraying, denying, or pretending at all on any level.
Yeah.
And that's when we're really, and it feels good. It gives you a lot of energy.
Exactly, 100%. I mean, I totally resonate with what you were saying about the mindfulness movement. Although it's amazing that we've come so far in such a short space of time, it is all about the mind and thoughts and all of this kind of thing. And sometimes it can stop you from coming into the heart. And from what you've been saying and, you know, the literature and things that I've read, it is about surrendering into the heart and surrendering into pleasure and what makes us feel good. And like you say, it doesn't have to be something huge. It can just be something really, really small. So that's a really interesting one, I think.
And really taking this present moment as our creative landscape for everything that we need.
Yeah. Tell us more about that, about the now. How important is really being in the now for developing flow and synchronicity?
It's the most important, because a lot of times we reserve our energy for some time in the future. You know, when I have all those things, then I'm gonna, you know, come out and unleash all these gifts. And it's about tapping into all of that right now, letting yourself focus on what's important now, wholly, fully, not just a little bit, not in the back of your mind, but today, now. What do you want to bring forward today? And using the moment as the most creative landscape there is. And in every moment, we're kind of shaping artistically our experience in a sense, right? Like if you're just sitting in the room right now, you can sit here and you know, take it in and be in awe, or you can just sit here and just think these are the same four walls that I've seen every single day, and not even pay attention.
Yeah.
So it's learning how to be fresh in our mind, fresh in the moment. Meditation allows us to tap into that spontaneous action of self, you know, cutting right to the heart of what needs to be done. For example, there's some people who we really go into our mind when we think about the things we need to complete, versus just going to the source of what's important to complete first. And so there's sort of this purposeful action or spontaneous action that comes into play when we let ourselves be fully present and be our true self. And it is a vulnerable place. And these days, vulnerability is a really big topic through Brene Brown's work. And I love her work.
Yeah,
and
it's amazing.
Yes. And that's what I feel spiritual practice is for, is tapping into those vulnerable places inside of ourselves and giving ourselves the safety and security to express those tender, soft places that are within.
Yeah. And it makes sense that to really engage passionately, you know, from your heart into something that you really love and enjoy will bring you more into the present moment anyway. Because if we're doing something and our heart's not in it, there's a bit of a disconnect, isn't there? And we can then more easily be distracted by the things that are going on around us. But I think it starts with drawing that attention inwards, becoming still and, you know, soft, and then just kind of going from there, really. Can you tell us a bit more about becoming softer in our energy?
Yes, I'd love to. And I want to say something about what you had talked about, because I agree with you. We can do things and we can half be there in
Mm,
anything in our relationships. Sometimes we can engage in work where we sort of disassociate from ourselves.
mhm,
We have to check our soul at the door
mm,
and show up as a different person because that's what's accepted at work.
mhm.
And so that's why I think it's so important to engage in those pleasurable activities, is just because it's something that we can give ourselves wholly to. And there's something magical about surrendering your whole self into something and trusting it. And again, I think that's a place that we have to learn how to resource within ourselves,
Yeah.
or find something where we feel safe enough to completely let go. And it's an interesting, I guess, dance between totally letting ourselves go but finding more of our sense of self. So
Mm,
it's an interesting, I guess, healing dance in the way
mm.
that that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. How has that manifested for you during your journey? How have you managed to get to that state of letting go?
Well, I would say, and this goes into your other question about being soft. So what happened was I traveled around Asia, India mostly, to different ashrams and spiritual centers. And in doing these ancient spiritual practices, I was pretty hardcore. So I was learning yoga from the Yoga Sutras and really in Sanskrit. And actually, I wrecked my body doing these practices. I stopped having my period as a woman. My hormones became very imbalanced. I lost a lot of weight and I didn't look like myself. I didn't feel like myself. I had no more breasts or hips or buttocks. I mean, I just felt much more androgynous, more like a man. And then I woke up to the fact that, wow, these practices were created 5,000 years ago by men for other men. Women weren't even allowed to practice yoga 5,000 years ago. So that action of pulling all of my energy up all the time and not allowing any energy to flow back down to the earth, that women's connection to the earth, that really caused me to stop and actually stop learning from any tradition or lineage. And I decided at that time I was going to I really wanted to learn what meditation was. So even though I spent a couple of years traveling and learning, I felt that I didn't have a good grasp of meditation. So I understood the textbook definition of it and all the practices that you needed to do, but I wanted to learn for myself, by myself. So what I did was I decided to go to a remote island in British Columbia called Salt Spring Island, and I rented a little cottage on a lake in a remote area within this remote island so that I could be in solitude. And I wanted to learn meditation. That was my intention. And of course, when I started this experience, it was pretty hardcore. I applied that same hardcore approach that I learned, wake up at the crack of dawn, meditate for hours, do this for, it was like every time I was at a spiritual center, it was every hour of my day was taken up. And even if I had a break, I had to have karma yoga. I still had to work. And so there was always this full engagement from morning till night, morning to night. We had to wear uniforms or we had to wear really plain clothing. I mean, it was the same sort of program. And I didn't want to live those programs anymore, even if it was from a spiritual tradition. And even though I really wanted to know the roots of the practice, I knew that it was hindering me from truly understanding the essence of meditation. So in any case, I tried to apply that same hardcore approach to being in solitude in nature and being surrounded by these huge, massive pine trees and fir trees, like just all around, and the most peaceful, calm lake right in front of the cottage. I had no neighbors, nothing was there. I had no internet, no phone. It was literally waking up, practice, writing, chopping wood, carrying water. I mean, that was really the lifestyle that it was. I loved it. But what happened was being surrounded by all that nature, swimming in the lake naked every single day, is that I started to soften. I actually started to feel more of my energy. Instead of just doing these linear yoga moves that I was accustomed to, I let myself, move in circles. I started to gyrate. I let myself dance. I let myself tap into these softer feminine energies. And being naked most of the time, because there's nobody there, swimming in the lake, and just being with my feminine self, really being with it without a bunch of people around me and without a male teacher that you had to in a sense almost perform for, because many of all the traditions, all the teachers were male from what I had learned. So I think that also can subtly impact your practice. So that was the first time I was able to completely let go, because I was not in anybody else's radar. Nobody could see me. Nobody could judge me. It was just me. I could cry. I could sob. I could let it all out like I had never let it out before. I could do my practice in all these weird and funky ways that I had never done before, because I was completely and utterly alone. And I think that experience of being surrounded completely by nature and nurtured and nourished by nature, that opened up a whole new space. And that's when I realized, oh, these softer, subtle energies that I've always connected to, but I shut myself away from.
Yeah.
Because we live in such a hard yang masculine culture where it's like produce, go, more and more, numbers, money, and so it kind of like always pushes you out of your center, right? There's never that permission to totally sink in, and feel everything, and be with everything, because it's harsh, if you open up your nervous system through spiritual practice and you live in a city. All that energy goes straight into your nervous system. It actually causes more dissonance. And with meditation, you are working with this fluid, for what we teach, it's like this very fluid flow-like state. And it can be delicate when you go into those deeper states. They're not practices you would just do on the subway train, for example, when you open up your energy. So when you learn to work with energy and you become aware of that, and maybe even how sensitive you are, for me, I wasn't able to go deep into my sensitivity. I wasn't able to go deep into my emotions or my feelings, because, the traditions I learned from were so hard. They were like, transcend your emotions, get past that, focus on the mind. Everything had to be logical. There was very little room for imagination and flow and creativity. And so that was how I discovered the power of being soft, and that we didn't, you don't have to have this hard encasement, which is what I was used to operating within. That was just the safest way I could feel. And even now I notice when I start to put that armor on, just because there's so much more. When you meditate, you become, your senses really expand. And so, it can feel more challenging to go into more physically demanding places. So, noticing when you want to armor up, or we feel the need to armor up, I feel that meditation helps to not just release the armor and the guard, but to release the veils, that are often there through our thinking mind. There are these veils, and you can feel and see them, and you can see when somebody has taken them off as well, through their energy, because they have a strong aura, and you start tapping into your radiance and your energy. And this is the life force energy, our creative life force energy that we learn to tap into through meditation. And you can work with that. That's the flow intelligence. And the universal energy.
What an amazing story. It sounds amazing where you went to stay. I had something slightly similar. I went on Vipassana, and that was no phone, no writing or anything like that, although that was quite regimented. But I kind of bend the rules a little bit and tried to do it in a more of a flowy way. But I totally appreciate what you were saying about firstly the solitude aspect of it, and then being in nature as well. I think those two things can really tune you in to everything around you. You're almost kind of disconnecting from the normal world or the real world, and then, you know, going into nature, which is where all of our power lies, right?
Yes, because nature has intelligence and wisdom that we can learn from. It's energetic. Even trees and mountains, they have consciousness, and you can be surprised by yourself how much we shift even subtly in the presence of others. And so when you remove that that element, you really can get to know yourself. And I think having the integration of solitude and being in the world is key. Because we also see, I think sometimes what happens when people are on the spiritual path is that they end up, you know, staying in the spiritual places because those are safer, more contained spaces. And we need more people that can bring it and walk in both worlds. That's what we need today. I think that's the real spiritual path, is learning how to balance, you know, our need for solitude and nature and retreat, and honor those cycles for ourselves with being in the outer world.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost maintaining that sense of inner balance, or that sense of peace, you know, whilst we're in nature and we're on our own. And then also we bring that back into the wider world when we're connecting with people as well. How do you suggest that we do that? How would you maintain that sense of that balance inside?
I think it's a moment to moment awareness of your vibration. Because your energy, your vibration is always communicating to you. And we know when we're a little depleted and we're tired or we're thirsty. So just listen to that. So many people, I think because we live in a push culture, a performance culture, we teach ourselves to ignore those cues. And that's also what I did with yoga. I just ignored my body. Even if my body said that hurt or that didn't feel right, I pushed right past it. And I don't do that anymore. I listen to my body. I listen to my energy. When my energy says like, I'm done, or I just need a glass of water, or I just need to go walk outside for 5 minutes, I just do it. I don't sit there and try to push through, you know, get through something else. I actually put the energy, I try to pay attention to energy first. Because the energy is what's leading, and that's what's also connected to the flow state. Because I don't know if you probably experienced this, Carrie, but when you're like really spiritually tuned in, I mean, just like, you know, really strong meditation, tuned in, dropped in, I really can get there more through nurturing practices, restorative practices, where it's just your energy feels contained and nourished. And you know when you're there, and it's in those states, you can feel anything's possible.
Yeah.
You feel the power of possibility. That's when synchronicity really shows up. Things are just flowing. They're coming together. They're all coming together by themselves because you're clear. Your vibration, your energy is in a clear and balanced state. And that's what creates the magic. You're not creating the magic. You're just aligning yourself, your vibration to this energy that allows for you to be open and receptive to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I find it more when I'm doing yoga, actually. So I started doing yoga with Adrienne, and I love yoga anyway. I've been doing it for about 4 years, and I feel that when really deeply present in the body and there's no mental, you know, thoughts going on, that is when you open up to possibility, to the now. You know, you just become very, very present and attuned, I think is the right word, isn't it? Kind of becoming attuned to noticing those synchronicities, noticing those signs.
Yes, and being in those states of awareness. And I do think body is so important, listening to your body and clearing blocks from the physical body.
So how would we do that?
Well, when you have tension, like a lot of tension in the physical body, that's also like vibration, right? So disease,
Mm-hmm.
disease, they're vibrational states. And none of us are perfect. We all have stuff, okay? So I'm not talking about, in yoga, you work towards perfect health. And I do think it's important to have always an awareness of health, because health is also a vibration. But we got to work with what we have. So when you're working stuff out with your body and you're taking care of your body and you're moving your body, that also helps put you into a flow state, because your body is the physical instrument, the vessel through which you create.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say, I mean, if you're handicapped or anything like that, it does not mean that you don't have access to that. You just have a different relationship. And a lot of times people, when they are sick or handicapped or can't move, they're able to enter those deeper states of stillness.
Mm-hmm.
So that opens them up to flow state consciousness. And that's, the magic, it's where you feel really connected, where there's that sense of awe or reverence. And it's oftentimes in the ordinary moments kind of are able to look up and say, oh, I never noticed all those flowers over there. And you actually see new things in your environment you didn't notice before. So that's kind of, just opening up the consciousness. And it's not necessarily, to get something, even though I do associate flow and synchronicity and manifestation as one and the same concept. Because a lot of times you're much more open to intuition and insight, and you'll think something and then it happens. It's like, it's very instantaneous, right? So that's in those meditative states. So you kind of have the thought, but I'm not sure, it's like the chicken and the egg, is it the thought, or is it already coming in and you're perceiving it? So all of that is sort of the same thing, reflections of the same oneness. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So maybe for those people out there who are thinking a lot and they can't seem to get in their body, how important is our body's wisdom and our body's intelligence? Should we trust our feelings over our mind? Because I know, historically it's all been about our feelings are dangerous, we're wild, we're out of control, our emotions. So tell us a bit about how we can get more into the body.
Body is so interesting and important. So let's talk about what embodiment means and why embodiment is important. Because that's the realization of your spiritual knowledge in your physical form.
Yeah.
So that's embodiment. That means, somebody can have spiritual knowledge, but not necessarily live it and embody it. And oftentimes we do see that today, where people can, say a lot of things, but they don't necessarily live it or embody it in their everyday life. But we're all working towards that, applying what we receive through practice into our physical form. And what I find very interesting is that, men and women are genetically built very differently. I mean, biologically, even in our brain, there are over 100 brain differences between men and women. So for example, men, when they are connecting to language, they only use the left side of their brain. And women use both the right and the left side of their brain. The way men engage and feel in their body is different than the way women is. Men have a high level of testosterone, which controls the sex drive and levels of their aggression and competitiveness. They're much more physical. They need to move. Women give birth to life. We can create life. So if women give birth to life, how would they connect to their body maybe a little differently? How would you, honor your body and your feelings? The other brain difference is that men don't connect to emotions and feelings as deeply as women do. So this would explain, if we live in a more predominantly, masculine culture, why these other aspects like feelings and emotions might not be brought to the forefront or made as important as, you know, being logical or linear.
Being logical, I think, has been definitely championed in our society.
Oh, yes.
That hundreds, if not thousands of years, it's always like, if there's a problem, it's our brain that's going to figure it out. It's not going to be our heart or our body's intelligence. And I think the scales are turning, and, you know, we're kind of starting to balance those energies.
Yes, for sure. And our body has wisdom. So, for example, a woman can connect to her womb. You could even place your hands on your womb and ask a question and feel how the womb responds. And feel, you know, the energy in your core. You know, what are your bones telling you? What is your gut telling you? And like I said, we have been taught to ignore our feelings and our emotions, but feelings and emotions are gateways to growth. They're gateways to the divine. We don't connect to God through our mind. It's not an intellectual thing. You know, it's a whole felt sense. It's a whole experience that happens, you know, spiritually through our emotions. We might cry if we feel deeply touched. And whenever we have a strong emotion or a felt sense through spiritual practice, we can allow ourselves to be even more intensely present with that or pay attention to it, because oftentimes they have messages for us.
Yes.
And that's how we can start to grow and evolve. And synchronicity too is almost like this magnetic subtle sense. Learning how to follow this inner magnetism, the electricity or energy in our body, you know, that says yes, yes, yes. You know, it kind of, you could just feel your body when it says yes. You could put your hands on your heart and you could feel, if you imagine something that you're thinking about, you could feel if your heart expands or if it closes. And it's just these really simple, you don't have to put your mind into it. Just put your imagination and your energy into it. Put your heart into it, and you can receive those answers like 1 or 2 seconds. It's instantaneous. But I think the mind tends to wrap itself around a lot of things. So yeah, the body has wisdom, and we can listen to the body. And I think these tend to be more feminine-based practices because of that, because of the level of sensitivity that women often have with their body. Because we have different hormones and different, I would say, tendencies, that is very important for women to listen to their body and their emotions and their feelings. And also for men as well, even though it might not be as, you know, in the forefront for them. But this is how we access our intuition as well, is through our body, our emotions, and our feeling. Our emotions are often speaking to us. If we close any gateway to an emotion, whether it be shame or anger, you know, joy, then we kind of stave off that gateway to our intuitive self as well.
Absolutely. And our intuition can guide us, can't it, in the direction of, you know, our highest joy. So would you say that kind of listening to our emotions and allowing them to guide us is a way forward into flow and synchronicity?
Absolutely. Listening to your emotions, healing emotions, going, I think every time you have negative emotions, it's important to listen to them, to pay attention, and just to say, like, where is this coming from? Because then that's an opportunity to clear the emotion. So now it's no longer a block. And I think 2 of the biggest blocks for flow emotionally are shame and guilt.
Yes, 100%.
But these are also man-made or human programmed emotions.
Yeah.
So we can remove them as well, because we wouldn't know shame unless we were taught that. So we can unlearn that. And I think it's important for every individual to unlearn shame and guilt. Shame is like the most debilitating emotion to creativity and flow and power.
Yeah, and guilt, right? Because we can almost hold ourselves back because we feel guilty about, moving forward, or the impact of our choices on other people, perhaps, or even ourselves, and what doors that might open up. It can be almost scary to kind of surrender into the unknown and trust from the heart rather than trying to figure everything out in the mind.
And there is such thing as the Jonah complex. Have you heard of that complex?
I've heard of it, but reminds me again. Not too sure.
It's the fear of realizing our greatness.
Yes. Yeah.
And our potential, because we might be shamed and we might be set apart and we might be separated from our loved ones. So we will then hold ourselves back so that we can still be in a group that's accepted and be part of our family and in the herd. So it's really important. And that's why I think meditation is so powerful, is because it brings the unconscious conscious. And that's also the purpose of synchronicity, is to bring the unconscious conscious, and of healing. So it's like, it's always to kind of bring what's unconscious, what could be holding us back, and making it seen, just becoming aware of it. And as soon as we become aware of what's holding us back, whether it's shame or the fear of judgment or the fear of rejection, as soon as we become more aware of that, it loses its power and it loses its grip.
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to kind of close off with one last question about non-attachment and how that can kind of get us in the flow and the slipstream of synchronicity.
Yes. So if we're able to learn this practice of conscious detachment, we can then start to enter into flow, or that state of oneness or peace. And detachment isn't necessarily, I think it's such a fine line. It's not about being cold, and it's not about being distant. It's not all this independence and self-reliance, if that makes sense, because we're all connected and we're all co-creating together all the time. It's just the ability to let go of our own egoic attachments, whether it be I'm attached to looking good, or I'm attached to being good. Some of these, like I said, unconscious values that we hold on to. I don't want to look bad. These are the most basic ones, is just the need to look good and the need to not look bad, and how they kind of keep us, it can keep us constrained.
Yeah.
Because, we're always achieving and looking for perfection. And so when we can let go of the need for perfection and the need for approval, or the need for validation, or even the need to be understood, we can really start to open up. And so it's learning how to let go of attachments, and even attachments to the past and the future, because our mind is always circling around these two states as well. So our energy's not all the way here, because a little bit of our energy's in the past. Maybe you're still processing a breakup, or some event that happened, a big loss, or even a big win. And then some of our energy might be too much into the future, like everything I'm going to create into the future. So we're always thinking about the future, what's going to happen. And so it's really learning how to drop everything so that you can just be fully present as you are. And I think some other states that we don't really touch upon, but I want to talk about, is that state of rawness and vulnerability, and I would say open-heartedness.
Yeah.
Because I think that these states are really powerful states to create in, and they can feel, I guess, delicate and tender and sensitive. And so sometimes we might not allow ourselves to go there because we haven't had that safety, from our childhood or elsewhere, to go deep into those places. But those are very powerful places to be in, is to, show up as your inner child's or your magic child, and allow that place of you to express and to create and to play. And also I feel that the universe feels that when we're at the source of our innermost self, the universe responds in this very visceral way. It responds more strongly. So if you're in that place and you have an intention, or you express something, slight, it actually can have a bigger impact because you're more in that state within yourself. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of
Yeah.
like bringing your whole naked self into what you're
Yeah.
doing, you're creating or being, and letting yourself operate and live from that place, even though it can feel a bit scary or delicate or insecure. But to kind of practice that as a spiritual practice can really be an incredible experience just in itself. How it allows you to have more human connection and intimacy and bonding and all of those things, relationships, going deeper into relationships.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, have you got anything else to say? Have you got any more kind of topics you want to explore?
I don't think so. I think that covers most of it. And it's really, I would say, if you're able to cultivate a daily practice and something that you enjoy, it doesn't even have to be meditation. Maybe it's walking, but something that you enjoy and show up for that every day, and create some sort of structure that supports the spiritual flow in your life, that allows you to show up as yourself authentically every day, and engage in something that enriches you every day, that you'll be able to enter those flow states. And it's really about relaxing into it, opening into it, opening your heart. There isn't any like doing or having to do or pressure. It's really like a state of openness, and that allows you to be in those higher states that are really just you.
Yeah, absolutely. So wonderful. What an amazing conversation. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for all the questions too, Carrie.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And where can people find you?
They can find me on our website. It's called suraflow.org, SURA, F as in Frank, LOW.org. And feel free to come visit us. We have free resources on the site, and you can also sign up for our blog newsletter.